Hi everyone, I'm Ryan Ballingy and welcome back to Golf Newsnet. We're working through the 2016 offerings from Mizuno Golf, so we have 3 iron sets that are here at our worldwide headquarters in the DC area, and we're working through playing them. We've reviewed our first set, and we want to tell you a little bit about the Mizuno JPX-EZ Forged irons. Now, you know the JPX-EZ line. The JPX line has been out for a few years now, and is Mizuno's effort to give players who tend to shoot in the mid-80s to around 100 an iron that gives them the kind of Mizuno feel that they love and they hear about from better players that they can play consistently, but in an iron that they can play and really enjoy. So this year they've come out with the JPX-EZ iron, which is a little bit of a follow-on, although not too drastically different from the JPX-EZ we've seen in the past. They've also come out with a forged model for this year, which, when we saw the look of it, really caught our attention, and you can see why. It's a gorgeous iron. It looks beautiful. The finish is wonderful. It doesn't contrast in sunlight, which we've been dealing with this time of the year where the sun goes down so early. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous iron, and as we mentioned, it's forged, which gives us, as we think, better feel, and it does. And what they've done with this, as they've done with many of their irons in their series, including 2 that we're reviewing for this year, including the MP25, which is a little bit more of a player's iron that we have in the bag right now, they've introduced boron into the forging process here. So they put 3 parts per million bore iron into these irons. And what they say it does is it allows it to make a stronger alloy, allows it to make a larger club head for them because it's stronger, and it allows them to produce something that is a little bit more confidence-inspiring in the JPX irons. We agree that these are very confidence-inspiring, but for a forged iron, when you think forged, you think a little bit more of a classical club shape, you think a little bit thinner in the top line, you think a little bit more geared toward a player who's probably going to shoot less than 85, not more than 85. And that's kind of the demarcation line we would have for these irons. And what we found is a couple of things that we like or don't like, depending on which side of that 85 demarcation that you fall on. So the first thing we want to point out is that there are a couple of different head shapes in this set. So the line of demarcation, as we mentioned again, is the 7 iron. So in the 7 iron, you look at that and you notice you get a pocket shape. Now, once you get past that 7 iron, you go down toward the 8 iron, 9 iron, pitching wedge, a gap wedge, and the sand wedge that come with the set. You notice that goes away. So all of a sudden, ta-da, you have your traditional cavity back. Now, what that means is it gives you a little bit more precision with the scoring clubs, or at least in theory it does. And then as you get up through the 7 and all the way toward the 3 iron in the set, which we really like, always love having long irons in the set, that gives you a little bit more of cushion to hit a little bit further and a little bit better. The other thing that you'll notice too is that throughout the set, the top line is a little bit thicker than you probably would expect for a forged iron. Depending on what kind of player you are, you may like that, you may not like that. And for us, that wasn't necessarily an appeal. When we think, again, forged iron, you think a little bit thinner at the top, you think a little bit more of an aggressive player's look that gives the confidence of workability, and you don't necessarily have that with these, and they don't necessarily perform that way either. When you think about the short irons, your scoring clubs, they're a little bit clunky in terms of feel, so you don't get as easily dialed in with these as you might with some of the other Mizuno irons that they've produced. But if you're a player that struggles to score, then that's not necessarily a bad thing. Give you the good feel and a little bit of feedback with each shot, but not necessarily too much feedback so that it's not enjoyable to hit these clubs. So there is a very strict line here of whether you're going to really enjoy these clubs or whether you're not going to. And then as you get through the mid irons and the long irons, the mid irons perform wonderfully. They're probably the highlight of the set in our opinion. But once you get up toward the long irons, the 4 and the 3 iron, it got more difficult to get the ball up in the air for whatever reason. From going from 5 to 4 iron, there was a drastic difference in the launch angle that we saw in hitting the golf ball, not only on the range but also on the course. And for us as high ball hitters, that's a little bit off-putting. So it's something to think about when you give these guys a try. But the good thing is here that you get, no matter what kind of player you are, you get the kind of turf support that you can kind of come to expect these days in terms of irons with a beveled leading edge and a beveled trailing edge, so you get some turf support. There's no problem getting through the turf of any kind here. That's good news here. Depending on the look, you may like a wider top line, you may not. That may be a deciding factor for you as well. And looking at the wedges here in the set, particularly the gap and the sand wedge, they really aren't the best irons for a better player. So if you're on that 85 to 90 cusp and you're starting to think about making an investment in your game to make better scoring decisions, to have better scoring clubs, go through that fitting process, get those wedges. that have a more traditional shape, that have a specialty shape, go get a Mizuno wedge, go get a TP5 or another one like that is an excellent wedge to play with, and it'll give you that traditional feel and that scoring feedback and the confidence that you can dial in and be ready to play. If you're on the 100 end of this range, then don't worry about it. Get a little bit better, then worry about making that investment. But for the price, around $1,000, you're making a big investment in your game. So if you are a player that tends to struggle and shoot in the 90s and 100, this is maybe a little bit too expensive for you. If you're on that cusp of being pretty darn good and getting in that better half of players in that 85 to 90 range, that would be our recommendation for these JPX-EZ Forged irons. Until next time, I'm Ryan Ballingy saying thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time.